we've made a lower third inside of Photoshop, a real basic one. Then we also did a lower third based on an old design. So I want to jump into After Effects and talk about how to add just some basic small animations to your lower third to add some interest if you are using those maybe for a broadcast or a video online or something. So let's jump in. So open up After Effects, and then we're going to click on New Project. And now we're good to go. Now, before I jump into importing our file, I do want to mention one thing that I realized when I started to do this tutorial the first time was that I probably should make some adjustments inside of my Photoshop file. So I'm going to go into the Photoshop file that we had, which was this basic one that we made. And what I want to make sure I do is move these plates to be as big as they can. So I'm going to go in here. So we have our main plate and we have this black box and top line. So that's what we want. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to slide this down and make it as big as I can. I'm going to go into the first one, and I'm going to go into the title, and we have our first box here. So I'm going to drag that down. And I want to make these as big as we can so that I can easily animate based on the size. Okay, so this looks good. I think we're good to go. I'm going to probably move maybe my text to a completely different layer or folder. So I'm going to put all my text in a different folder. And so sorry for having to backtrack on this a little bit. I don't typically do animated lower thirds, so how to organize this is a bit new for me for doing lower thirds animated. So we have our text here. I'm just going to put these in a folder, and I'm going to call this text. Okay, so we have our text layers. We have our verse one, our blue box. We'll just call this blue box. And we have our main plate. So I think that's how we want to break that up. That feels good. So the scripture lower third, let's go into this really quickly. So we have verse one. So again, I'm going to put my text all separate. I think this is the best option. So we'll just make this, group this and call this text. And the reference, we have our verse box, which is the blue box down there. We'll call this blue box. And then we have our main plate, which should be fine. Okay, and really I think we can maybe take all of these and throw these here, delete this first one. So now we have our text folder, our blue box, and our main plate. All right, so let's try that. So I'm going to save this. All this looks pretty good. Again, we might want to make that main plate as big as we can, so we have plenty of room to play with. All this can stay the same. We'll update that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's jump into After Effects. Go into After Effects. And now I want to import that file. So we've got it set up a little bit, and maybe that'll help us out. So I'm going to go click on this project window, and as long as it's highlighted blue, we're good to import. So I'm going to do Command I to import, and I'm going to do the basic LT lower third that we just were in. Let that import. It's going to ask us if we want to merge all these layers into a footage or keep them, keep the layer styles as they are, and that's what we want. So composition, editable layer styles, and hit OK. It's going to import that. We have all of our layers broken up here, and then we have our basic LT comp ready to go. So I'm probably gonna really just start from scratch on this one. Our design is in here, but I don't really want to use this layout. This is kind of bugging me a little bit. Maybe let's go into here and see what comes up. Nameplate scripture. Let's click on name slate. Maybe I'm gonna click on the name slate. Maybe this is where I want to start right here. Now, if you don't see this transparent background, you can click on this little checkerboard right here, and that will turn on the transparency so you can see it. So this was the folder that we made when inside of the Photoshop document. We have the scripture one, and we have the name slate. So that's really what I'm looking at inside of After Effects. And this is what I'm going to animate. So we can do a couple options. I'm going to go through how to just do a simple fade in, and then maybe a light slide in, maybe from the left or something. So we'll keep this text for now. Probably we'll turn this off because I want to make this really easy to edit inside of After Effects, but we'll keep it for now, and we'll get back to that in a second. But let's talk about these plates for a minute. Let's talk about how to animate these plates. So first, let's start with a simple fade in, fade out. So we have our main plate and our blue box, and I'm going to I'm going to click on one of them. Let's just click on main plate for now, and I'm going to hit T on the keyboard. T is going to bring up the opacity channel, and I want to make this go from 0 opacity to 100%. And I really want to do that over maybe the course of a second. So I'm going to take my playhead, which is this blue line. I'm going to drag it down to 0, and I'm going to click on this 100%. I'm going to hit 0 and hit enter, and that's going to put it at 0. So now I need to click on the stopwatch to say, hey, I want After Effects, I want to start making some keyframes. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and it'll add this little blue diamond, and that means there's a keyframe set at 0 on the time code. So I'm going to take my playhead, move it about a second or so up, and I'm going to click on that 0%. I'm typing 100, hit enter, and there we go. So now if you watch this back, you'll see it kind of fade in over time. And if you want to preview this, I'm going to take my little brackets, I'm going to drag it down here, and I'm going to hit 0 on the number pad, and it should do a quick little render and play it in real time so you can see what it looks like. If you don't have a number pad, I think you have to use maybe Option 0 or something like that, and it'll fade in. Okay, so that looks good. That'll work. So this would be the easiest way to do it if you need to move this thing around a lot. That way I can move this wherever I want and change the position and the size, and it's not going to affect the opacity. So for instance, if I need to make this shorter, which I do, I'm going to drag this down here, and now it still fades in, and I don't have to worry about the position or any of that kind of stuff. So that looks pretty good. Let's do the blue box. So I'm going to click on that, and what's cool is I can take these keyframes, since this has an opacity channel as well. So if I hit T on the keyboard, it has the opacity. I don't have to go through that process again and set those keyframes, and click on the stopwatch and hit 0, then hit 100. I can just copy these. I can highlight those blue diamonds on this main plate, hit Command C to copy, click up here on the blue box, and then I'm going to move my playhead just a little bit so that it fades in second from the main plate. So with this layer selected, right here where my playhead is where that keyframe is going to be pasted in. So I'm going to do Command V to paste in those keyframes, and now you can see we have the same values over the same course of time happening. So let's preview that. So they kind of fade in separate. All right, so that looks good. We can take this big blue box and move this down as well, maybe put it down here. And now we have to worry about our text. And when you go into Photoshop or you import a Photoshop file, your text files are going to be Photoshop documents, right? And that's not really gonna help us out a whole lot. Let's see if we can do convert to editable text. Let's see what happens when I do that. Sweet. So that works great. You don't have to retype that. You can click on these Photoshop files, right click, and do create and do convert to editable text, and it makes your text like text layers inside of After Effects. So I'm probably just gonna to save having to go back and forth between these lower thirds, I'm going to copy these. I'm going to paste these inside of the name slate. So now I have these on top. I can turn this one off. That way I can take everything, I can just stay within this composition and not go back and forth, and hopefully save some time there. So we have check it out. I'm going to slide this down here. I'm holding down shift so that it stays locked onto that plane. And then I can click on this. This one looks fine. So let's do a little opacity change on this as well. So again, I can take these keyframes, I can go click on the blue box with the main plate, hit U on the keyboard, copy these keyframes, and probably paste them even after the blue box opacity change. And the way I'm seeing those and pulling those up is I can hit U on the keyboard and it'll show me all the keyframes I have set, or for opacity I can hit T. I always hit U just to make it easy. So I'm going to click on the check it out, and we'll go right about here. I'm going to paste that in there. I can click on the Pixel Preacher website there, hit T on the keyboard so I can see, and I can paste that in. So I can click on those and pull those up and see those there. So we'll put check it out a little bit later. That looks good. So I got my keyframe here, and I'm going to hit 0 on the keypad and fade that in. So simple lower third, maybe you're putting up a website or a hashtag or a Bible verse. So that looks good. Now if I wanted to then fade this out, I can just click on all of these. I can hit T on the keyboard so it brings up, maybe hit T a couple times so it brings up the opacity, and I'm just going to set a keyframe just as they are. So I'm going to go over here to where these diamonds are. I'm just going to click and drag all the way down. So I've set a keyframe at 100% for all of these layers. I'm going to take my playhead to move it about a second ahead. Now I can, again, with all of these selected, I can just click on that 100, drag to the left, and make it 0. And if you want to stagger these, you can click and drag. Probably actually want those to fade out at the end or the beginning. So just a little bit different there. So now if I preview this back, it fades in, sits up there for a minute. You want to make sure you leave it up there plenty long, and it fades out. All right, so that would be a very simple animation just for opacity. So then you can, again, you can move these easily without having to affect, if you had something a lot longer, you can move these and not have to worry about the position. But now let's do a little bit more of a complex animation where we have it slide in from the left to the right. So I'm going to delete all of these keyframes. Don't need those anymore. So what we want to do is create a movement for the main plate and for the blue plate down here. Once we set that in position, we're going to lock it onto another layer here, and that way we can easily move it back and forth without having to adjust keyframes based on whatever's in our whatever our text is. So that'll all make sense in just a second. So let's go ahead and let's just start with this one and assume this is going to be my text. But what I really want to do is take my main plate and I'm going to have it animate all the way from over here all the way to the very end. Okay, so let's first start with the main plate. Now I want to adjust the position, so I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. So I want my very end position to be all the way over here. Okay, and so I'm going to lock that in by clicking that stopwatch. And so that's good. We'll probably put that at like 2 seconds. And then I'm going to take my playhead and put it all the way back at 0. And I'm going to drag that back all the way off the frame. So you can see it's very robotic, it's very straight. So what we want to do is we're going to add a little bit more of style to this, and by adding an easy ease to these keyframes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight my keyframe by just clicking and dragging right there, and they turn blue when they're selected. So then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease, and this is going to add a slight kind of a slow start and then a slow end. So you can see just a little bit, it sort of speeds up and then slows down. And that's all good. We're going to make it a little bit more fluid. So I'm going to right click, or sorry, not right click. I'm just going to click and drag to get those keyframes highlighted. And then I'm going to click on my graphic editor, which is right here, this little graph button or graph editor. So click on that. And then you get this this little arch here, and this is what we're going to adjust. So it's saying it's kind of starts off slow, then it picks up speed, then it kind of slows down. So I want to make this even more drastic. So I'm going to hit the plus key so I can see it a little bit more. And now I'm going to click and drag to get that keyframe over here, and then it gives me these little yellow handles. So once I get that, I'm going to click that yellow dot. I'm going to drag it over to the left. So now I'm telling it I want you to start slow and then go really, really fast, and then over the course of a second and a half or so, I want you to slow down very, very slow. So now if I watch this back again, it's going to pick up and then it slows down, so it's nice and smooth. So depending on how long you want that animation to happen, you can just click this and drag this keyframe out. So maybe you want this to last geez, come here, 4 seconds or 5 seconds. So now it's comes out like that. Okay, so we're going to put this back to about 2 seconds or so, 2.5 seconds. Okay, let's do the same thing for the checkout here. All right, so again, I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. So when I click on that blue box, I'm going to hit P. I have my position. I'm going to click the stopwatch, and I want to push this all the way to the end, as far as I can go before that left side shows up. So something like that. And now I'm going to go all the way back down here, and we're going to just slide this down. Get it out of the way. So it puts my keyframes wherever my playhead was, and that's okay. I'm going to move these back over here so it's sort of in line with the main plate. And I wanted to come in just a little bit after so that it's a little bit more interesting. So with my keyframes that I just made, I'm going to click and drag to select those, right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, and then I'm going to click my graph editor and highlight that last keyframe, click that little yellow dot and drag it to the left. So then I'm getting that same kind of arc that was on that main plate. So you can see it fly out kind of right behind it, which is good. So you can move these all around however you want it to animate. That's totally up to you. So I'll leave that up to you, however you want to do it. Just mess around with that graph editor and get it just right. So now here comes the thing. So let's say we have all this dead space, right? We have all this. I don't want all this space. And so if I were to change the name, so let's say I'll just put my name in here. Whoops. Right. Then I would have to come in here and probably adjust this keyframe, put my playhead right on top of this keyframe and slide it down to get it just right. And we could do that. That'd be fine. But I did the wrong one. It'd be this one here. I'd have to adjust my keyframe just like that. But I don't want it to put my playhead on the same thing every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another layer. And this is basically going to be think of it as like a handle or something. It's going to be a fake layer and an invisible layer that I'm going to attach this one to, so that wherever I move that invisible layer, this one's going to go with it. Okay, so hear me out. So I'm going to go up here to layer, and I'm going to go to new, and I'm going to go to null object. So again, just pretend this says, pretend layer. That's basically what this says. So we're going to call this main plate movement. Okay, really probably placement would be better, but we'll go with it for now. So I'm going to drag this down. You can really put this anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it down here. All right, so the next thing I want to do is tell this layer to do whatever this layer does. So the way to do that is I'm going to go to over here, this little swirly line is a pick whip. I'm going to click that on the main layer, and I'm going to drag it up, and I'm going to attach it to the main plate movement. All right. So now wherever I move this fake layer that you see right here, it's going to move my main plate layer. See? And so the same thing goes with the name. The name is attached to the main plate layer. So I'm just making a chain basically. So the reason I did that was because if I'm going to do a bunch of these, let's say I have, a bunch of different lower thirds to make, now I can quickly move this in place. I can move this with my fake layer without having to adjust the keyframes and all that good stuff. For instance, so now, I put my new name in here, and now I need to make this a lot shorter. I don't want to have to go in here and, put my playhead on top of this keyframe and adjust it. I just want to grab my new pretend layer, and I'm just going to drag it to the left. So that when I click on that, it has this little red box. This is my little null object. I'm going to click my little crosshair and hold down shift and just drag to the left. Okay, perfect. So now it does its animation and it stops. So I'm gonna do the same thing for this blue layer. I'm gonna make a new, let me close some of these down. I'll make a new fake layer. I'm gonna go to layer, new, null object, and we'll call this blue plate movement. I'm gonna drag it on top of the blue box, and I'm gonna take that blue box layer, grab its little pick whip, and drag it and attach it to the blue plate movement. All right, so now wherever I put this blue plate movement will be where this blue plate actually goes. So again, you make sure don't move this one. Make sure you move the null object that you made. So with it selected, the blue plate's connected to it. My check it out text is connected to the blue box. So the text is going to go where the blue box goes, and the blue box is going to go where the null object goes. So again, I'm just going to click that, drag it over. So now if I hit render, I see the full animation and it drags it out. So let's say they throw another lower third at me and I need to make it, and it's back to that website. Okay, now it's all off the screen. I need to go in here and change this to whatever this text would be. I'll get it right. Okay, it's still not right, but whatever, it's fine. Visit our site. So now I got this text all on the screen. I don't want to go and adjust my text layers or my box. I can just click on my main plate, and you can see it's over here. I can make sure my move tool is selected, or my pointer tool, and click and drag, holding down shift to about right there. Same thing with my blue plate. Click and drag, put that wherever you want it to go, and you can render it out, and it's good to go. So you keep that animation style while just moving these fake objects, and that's easy. So now you can quickly make a bunch of different lower thirds based on what the text is going to be. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing. If you have any questions on it, stop me or place a comment in the video and let me know, and we'll figure it out. So another option is to do from the ground up. So let's import some of the layers that we had from the design that we had from the that stone background from the previous sermon series design. So I'm gonna do click up here in my window, Command I, Messengers LT. We'll say keep all this stuff the same, retain layer sizes. And we didn't really go in and organize this one, but that's okay. We'll just deal with it. Let's see what we're looking at. Oh, I guess I didn't save it hardly at all, so that's okay. We'll make it work. So let's turn off some of these things. All right, so I think what's happening is, sometimes when you import Photoshop files, it doesn't quite read things right. So That's fine. We'll be fine with this. So this is our main plate, right? So I'm gonna click on this. This is pretty much everything. I'm gonna turn on color correction because I want to keep that on there. But with this plate, I just need this bottom part. So I'm gonna draw a mask around it. The way I'm gonna do that is make sure my layer is selected. I'm gonna go up here to this rectangle tool. I'm just gonna draw a mask, and I want to get it right on that gold line. You can see this gold line right here. So I'm gonna use my arrow keys and kind of adjust that mask down a little bit, and boom, now we're ready to go. So another way you can do this, again, we've talked about the opacity options. I'm not going to go into that, but if you were going to do a position movement, you would hit P on the keyboard, click that stopwatch, move this over, pull this down here. I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly because I'm basically doing the same thing as I did earlier. You can highlight those, right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, and then move these down here. Boom. So now if I watch this back, it kind of slides up, which looks nice. And so let's say we added some text in here. Again, I could right click on this and say create, convert to editable text. And that works just perfect. Now we have our reference in here, which is this random box. That's kind of, see, it didn't quite register the clipping mask that I had. So you probably have to go back and rasterize those, or you can just draw a box like this. So I'm gonna click on that reference layer, click on the rectangle tool, draw this box around my text. And you can adjust this by, if you didn't quite get your box right, hit your pointer tool, and I can double click, take my mouse right on top of that mask, double click there, and then adjust it with my arrow keys. Okay, so real quickly, I would make another fake layer like we said, and I would do layer, new, null object, and say this is going to be LT placement. And I'm going to drag it down here. I'm going to have my text connect to the main plate. I'm going to have the reference connect to the main plate. And then that I might have to do something different with that, but we'll see. So then I would take my placement. Let's say I only had 2 lines of text. I could just take my fake layer that I made and slide it down here. Oops, I didn't connect it. Plate needs to connect to the placement. I can just drag this down here. And so if you just did one little line down here, you could just now you have your animation come up, and it's just right there. So let's talk, before we go, let's talk really quickly about exporting these and how you would keep this transparent background. Based on different switchers or whatever you're using for your live production. If you're doing something live production, you may need to do some sort of bright green or something, or some sort of key that you would use. Maybe your switcher, you don't want to talk to your tech team, but they may need this to be like a certain blue or a certain green you could put back there. And if you needed to do that, you would just do a layer, new, solid. Well, if I can get there, new layer, solid, and then make your color, whatever they need it to be able to key that out. So you would drop that in there. It would animate. They would take this blue out, and you would have the screen. Or, if you're doing this for, a video you're going to export or put online or something, you don't need to do that. If you want to, export these and put them in Premiere, then you can definitely do that by, I would just go and export these. So I would go to, let's go back to this one here. To get this transparent background, I go to Composition and Add to Render Queue. And you can, best settings, you can leave that as is. Nothing really to change there. I'm going to click on this where it says Lossless. And here, mine says AVI, yours probably says animation or something like that. If you click on format, I'm going to go to, it's very different on a PC that I'm still trying to get used to, but let's see, maybe QuickTime. Let's see that. That's it. Animation. So I'll do QuickTime animation, hit OK, and then you want to make sure that you change this depth right here to say millions of, RGB plus alpha. That's what you want. Channels RGB plus alpha. I thought it was under depth, but millions colors plus. This can say the same. So this should create your transparent background. Problem is these files are going to be big, so hopefully you have some space and your system can handle it. So they might be based on how long they are, they could get up to a couple of gigs if they're super long. So, but hopefully they're short and they don't last very long, and this will get you through it. But that's what you would do: format, animation, and then RGB plus alpha. Hit OK and render that out to wherever you need it to go. And that should do it. You can import that into Premiere or any other program, and it should be fine to have this transparent background. So I hope that helps. Thank you for sticking through this. I hope this was helpful in some way with teaching you to do these lower thirds. If you have any questions whatsoever, post them in the comments or in our Facebook group, and I'll be happy to help you out and make it a little bit clearer if I can. So thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.